We just saw this story. Biden basically defended Israel. He literally defended Israel. He says that there hasn't been a significant overreaction as IDF bombards Gaza and troops mass on border. Yeah, Biden is paralyzed.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the ability to be strong and firm. It's just not within him. He's going to stumble and mutter in his words and fall asleep halfway through. So if anything, we could discount any, conspiracy theories about military industrial complexes or whatever. Fine. But it could very well just be that Hamas is like, Trump's gone, green light.
Yeah.
Because Biden ain't going to do anything about it. And then Israel's like, well, we're gonna strike back. And what's Biden going to do about it?
Exactly. And at this point, Israel may be making the calculation, why not go and do all this? The irony in all of this is that for the left who pretends to care about the Palestinians, Trump was the best president for them because he was able to keep the whole house in order, because you almost had this this chaotic energy all the time that was keeping everybody on their toes there. So if anybody got out of line, he was able to step in and be like, well, if you do this, it's going to happen. And they don't know what kind of wild card he's going to throw at them. Look, that's the difference. With Biden, they both know he's paralyzed.
Exactly. Look at the Abraham Accords.
Yep.
You had these Arabic nations signing these peace treaties and these deals and these economic ties with Israel, and no explosions.
Yep.
But you know what? That's why I was saying that's bad for the military-industrial complex.
100%.
That's bad for the establishment that wants gas pipelines. And then it's really funny because I think it was I don't know if it was Jack who pointed this out, but they shut down the Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan wants to shut down this oil pipeline. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. The Colonial Pipeline hack. They shut down Keystone. We went from being energy independent to energy dependent very quickly. And it provides another excuse to have a presence in the Middle East. To have a
100%. We talked about this just like a couple hours ago. We were saying that essentially, we need to get to the point as a nation, and this is part of being anti-war, we need to be energy independent, because if we're not, then we need to be worried about every time an oil field gets captured by a terror group or gets burned by a terror group. We were in a place under Trump where if that happened, it wasn't such a big problem for us unless you're investing in oil, in the stock market. But for American people at the gas pump, it wasn't a big problem because we were energy independent enough to deal with whatever came outside there because we had enough here. With Biden, you don't.
It's awfully convenient for those who wanted to keep our military in Syria. I remember when Trump wanted to pull out of Syria, and then they basically were like, but the oil. So Trump says, okay, fine. We're keeping in just enough troops to get the oil. And he just blurts it out. It was really funny because the anti-war left is continually like, Trump's admitting exactly what the U.S. is doing.
Yeah.
And they don't get it. Trump was admitting it on purpose. He doesn't want, Trump did not want to be there. Trump didn't care about it. All Trump cared about was America, America first, energy independent, bring our jobs back, make America great again. He didn't care about being in Syria. So when they were like, we're not going to pull our troops out, Trump was like, why? Because they're guarding oil. Trump said, then get everyone else out and guard the oil. And then he goes on TV and says, don't worry, we still have all their oil. And everyone, like, don't you appreciate he's pulled the curtain back?
He's breaking the fourth wall and telling you exactly what this is. This is all theater to distract you from what's really going on. This is what's really going on. So if that's what they want, here, they can have that. But we're not going to do this.
Remember when Trump was standing outside, like by the helicopter or whatever, and he's like, we're doing a great weapons deal with Saudi Arabia. It's going to be great for our economy. We're going to make billions of dollars giving weapons to this country. And the anti-war left was just like, he just admitted it all. He just came out and said it.
They actually that was the beauty of Trump, though, you know, in so many ways. And I think that it's something we're going to see again when he comes out and does these rallies. But he was just so transparent about all these things. And in a weird way, so much of our country was not ready for that transparency because they were conditioned, you know, through many different things. But, you know, just this exposure effect by itself of your whole life being exposed to people who lie to you.
Right.
Having this person just blurt out the truth all the time sounds crazy.
He lied about weird, stupid things a lot.
Yeah. But like the important stuff, he would just blurt out the truth. And people were so conditioned to having people in positions of power lie to them that was like just an earthquake.
This was how you could tell the agenda of Trump was legitimate. He would lie about things. When he would lie about something, you knew it was something he actually cared about, domestic policy or his character. And then he would be openly just like, oh, yeah, we're getting the oil and we want to pull everybody else out and we're selling weapons to these countries. He didn't care about that. He didn't want to keep doing it. It meant nothing to him. So he had no problem telling people because it wasn't part of his agenda.
Yeah.
The things he was lying about, like, you know, Stormy Daniels stuff or just like ego stuff.
Number of people
at his rallies. It were things that directly impacted his mission agenda and stature in the United States. And it's there's The Intercept said that he was simultaneously the most honest and the most deceitful president we've ever had. Because on these really important issues, he would just like open his mouth and tell you everything.
Well, the thing that they never honestly actually talk about is that he's an entertainer. He's not a politician. And when you're an entertainer, you're a storyteller. When you tell stories, things are naturally going to kind of get a little bit grandiose, And I think that to some degree, people need to have common sense and understand that,
Yeah. I will say too, when he had the inauguration and he was like, there was more people who watched this than any other group. And the media was like, that's a lie. What they do is these clever tricks where Trump says we had the biggest inauguration ever. The media then goes, there were only 50,000 people in D.C., which means Trump lied. And it's like, did Trump say only in attendance, or was he referring to all viewership online in general?
Yeah.
And so they always make the assumption in the worst possible way to make it look like he's lying or being manipulative. That was what the media did the whole time, and that's
the story of his presidency. That is the story of the presidency.
Now we got Joe Biden, and I just got to say it's really funny because I honestly didn't think we would all be so spot on. All of the I don't want to necessarily say conservative, but Democrat critical or establishment critical personalities, be it the disaffected liberals or the conservatives, were like, Joe Biden's going to have a radical left policy agenda. It's going to cause more war. Gas prices are going to skyrocket. The riots are going to continue. And I mean, I genuinely thought all that would happen, but I kind of felt like we wouldn't be like 5 for 5.
I thought it would take 6 months. That's 4. The thing. I didn't know it would be this fast. Right? He's like on some sort of weird kind of failure speed. I didn't know they made it. He's doing speedballs for failure because he's just like a rocket, and in every other way, he's like asleep.
I know.
No. Remember that quote from Joe Biden I mentioned the other day where he was like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he goes, the one thing that you got to do, to be great, and when you're, it's, anyway. do you remember when he did that?
Yeah, he was like, anyway.
So
I'll move on. You guys want me to move on?
Here, I'll tell you what I think's happening. Biden comes out, and he's all like, shaking and confused, and it's, they're like, what's your plan? Better care. And then all the Democrats are just clapping and cheering for it.
Yeah.
And all the conservatives are like, the dude's insane. He's off his rocker. His brain isn't working. And then he goes, I'm going to get in trouble if I take questions, so I'm going to get out of here. He walks backstage, and he's like, oh, where's Jill? And then he stands up straight, and he goes, we're done. Now, moving forward, I want hyperinflation. We're going to decimate this economy. We're going to drop consumerism. Yep. Climate change is a very serious problem. Now, over here, I want more immigrants coming through the border, so rescind Trump's orders, and we're going to reopen these facilities. We want to create chaos, ladies and gentlemen. Get the job done.
And get me another 50 million of Bitcoin.
At least
you think he's a bumbling fool. But I'll put it this way. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying, at a certain point, the failures, how could you be, in terms of like policy positions in 4 months, 0-5? Like, the riots are still happening. Inflation is getting worse. These are his policy positions.
100%.
They're dropping the charges on Antifa. He's giving out more money for people not to work. He's rescinded Trump's executive orders. He's reopened the migrant facilities. He's funding these Palestinian groups. How could that be an accident?
It can't be. It can't be. And by the way, you have to use the correct term. It's not inflation that's happening. It's Bidenflation.
Bidenflation.
Yes,
was that Posobiec who came up with that?
Yeah, I think so. That was the first way, but it is. It's Bidenflation.
It's stagflation.
Yeah.
It's people not working and inflation at the same time, which is like the most
dangerous thing possible.
I can't believe it's an accident.
It's not.
When I saw the story from The Guardian where it was like Gretchen Whitmer orders the closure of an oil pipeline in Michigan, I was like, get out of here. There's no way it was a coincidence that we have a pipeline shut down, the Keystone's shut down, and people are running and filling up garbage bags with gas. And then she's like, now's a good time to shut down another pipeline.
Yep.
That's
You're
clearly
spot
on
on.
purpose.
You're spot on. And this is not the first time that any of this has happened. This is the playbook to color revolutions, to bringing Marxism into a country. You need to make it as weak as possible in so many different areas that all you have to do is kick one leg of that desk out and it's all going to topple because every single one of them has been loosened.
It's frogs in a pot. So we talked about this before, shocking the system. I've been saying we should abolish the police for the past couple of months. Why? Most of the good cops have left. We've got tremendous reports, a Michael Tracy report on this, huge numbers of people arrested for not wearing masks or for running small businesses. You had a woman in south of Minneapolis arrested because she opened her coffee bar during COVID. So you have cops arresting these people. Meanwhile, Antifa's getting cut loose. I get it. The cops still arrest them, but they get cut loose. Now most of the good cops have quit, and what's left are the cops who will do whatever they're told. If you leave this system as it is, we can already see what's happening. Black Lives Matter calls the police. They're at a guy's house. He brandishes a shotgun in his own home. They call the cops. The cops arrest him from his own home. They don't want to abolish the police. They've weakened the police department, demoralized them to the point where they can get cops who will come in and enforce anything they're told. Conservatives now need to be paying attention to this because they're frogs in a pot boiling, defending the police, and the changes are slow enough to where within a year, you're going to have your woke police force. They're going to arrest you in your own home. They're already doing it, in which case you can be a frog in a pot, or you can be a frog someone threw a rock at. Get shocked out of it.
You got to think about it. I would say this would be my pushback to it, is that I think that the country is so divided that in the cities that are controlled by Democrats, the police forces, the police chiefs have been chosen by the Democrat mayors. The police forces have been neutered, essentially. And you're right that most of the good people have left. And so what we have left there in those cities is police departments that essentially bow down to the mob. But in the rest of America, we don't. Like in most parts, there's some places where we've seen them act crazy over COVID orders and stuff like that. But I can say in Tennessee, like our local police, they refuse to enforce any of the mandates. They refuse to enforce anything like that. And so that's a very different world. And none of those officers are losing their jobs.
So let's clarify. I'll clarify. When the left says abolish the police, they're not talking about Tennessee. They're talking about New York City.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like, go for it.
I just want to clarify that from my home state. So, I think that idea that it's all one thing is something we have to be very clear about. But in terms of what's happening in the big cities, honestly, I don't know exactly what the answer is, because
let them get rid of their cops.
When you look at it, if that's what all of them want, they're going to have to see what the outcomes are. And honestly, I think the real answer is for the police who are there right now and are putting themselves in harm's way when they bow down to these people, they need to walk away from their job.
Ultimately, my point was, if we keep sitting here as the police departments are attacked and demoralized and good cops quit and bad cops take jobs, we are frogs in a pot being boiled. And you won't realize when the change has happened, when all of a sudden your cop knocks on your door and says, where's your critical race theory book? Prove you have it. You'll just be like, how did we get to this point? Because if at any point, if the Democrats came out right now and said, we're going to mandate that all police arrest anybody who displays white privilege, people would revolt. People would freak out. They'd be screaming. They'd be like demanding people get fired. You do it slowly over the course of a year, 2 years, or 3 years.
From the bottom up.
And then people are just like, did you hear about John? He got something about white privilege. I don't know what happened. And then one by one, these things keep happening. And then eventually it's normal. It's incrementalism. If you do it. So I'll use the story of eBay, which I've told before. When eBay first started, the website was yellow. Did you ever hear the story?
No.
The website was yellow. One day they decided we want to redesign the website. They made the website white. They got inundated with complaints. People were like, I hate it. It's awful. So they changed it back. Every day, they incremented it one shade closer to white over the course of a year. A year later, the website was white and no one complained because it was so gradual, no one noticed. So right now, what's happening is, you mentioned like Marxism and coming in and weakening the country. If they came in and stood up and said, I'm a Marxist candidate who wants to run for office, they'd never win.
Nope.
You get in the Democratic Party, now they've gotten to the point where they've actually entertained socialism and it's working.
Yep.
Now they can tell you socialism is a good thing. Socialism is great. And now people are starting to actually, I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, they added the word socialism to the Democratic Party Wikipedia page.
Yep.
Tenets, socialism. They're doing it slow enough because you can't just do it all at once for a few reasons. People notice right away a massive change and don't like it, but they need to make it transition along with the aging demographics.
Yep.
So when we have these leftists on the show and they're in their 20s and they're like, you got to vote for Joe Biden. And then I mention the Obama administration. They go, oh, I was 15 when that happened. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so when they were blowing up kids, you weren't paying attention.
You'll learn this time. You'll learn this time.
But it's not just about the individual. It's about the demographics. So
you're spot on, because like
Right.
Fidel Castro, if you ask somebody, is Fidel Castro, was he a communist? You're going to be like, oh yeah, absolutely. Well, he never admitted he was in the lead up to the revolution. He only admitted he was a Marxist after they'd consolidated enough power. He had already taken power and they had an alliance with the Soviet Union. That's when he said, I'm a Marxist. Before that, he said, I'm a humanist, I'm a Catholic.
Yep.
not
Yeah,
a
you showed us that
communist.
image where it was like a humanist revolution.
Yeah.
And then we know what happened after that.
Yep.
You look at what happens, and I'm sorry, I can shout this out whenever I get the opportunity. Maduro giving a speech to a starving nation in Venezuela, and then just reaching into a drawer, pulling out an empanada, and taking a big old bite. You know what I'm gonna do?
That is them encapsulated. Can we sell that as an NFT? You know, it's like that's the Marxist we were talking about.
I can't believe he did that.
I know, it's insane.
They're so brazen. They know that once they've demoralized you to that point, he can eat food in front of you as you starve, and no one will do anything about it.
Yep. Step one is get on TV and treat Americans like dogs and tell them that they can get a prize.
Well, hold on, dogs are treated pretty well in this country.
No, okay.
Maybe like,
but I'm
like
talking about the training
groundhogs.
aspect. The training aspect, saying you can have your treat if you
Right,
take
right,
your
right.
medicine. That like we saw today.
Yeah, what was that? What
Cheeseburger.
was that thing from Biden? I don't have it pulled up. You know, he's like, if you get your vaccine, otherwise you wear a mask. That's the deal. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, it isn't, Joe. Like, I don't live wherever it is you live. Okay,
Yep.
because even though he said that, DC's operating under different rules. So the CDC comes out and they're like, if you're vaccinated, you don't got to wear a mask. Well, Washington, D.C. doesn't care. They said that. Washington, D.C., it's a federal jurisdiction, but they're doing whatever they want. Texas hasn't cared for some time.
Yep.
They've got no mask mandate. Florida, the same. And out here, they've already announced the end of the mask mandates in several states. And some of them are blue states. And I'm like, I don't know who he's talking to. Who is Joe Biden talking to? New York City, I guess?
He's talking to himself through the guise of his abusive father in the 50s, when that's how they talk. The meaner and the more cruel you were, the more likely the kid was to be subservient and say, yes, sir.
I don't know, man. I look at how kids are getting raised today, and it's like, I feel like kids today are the epitome of "shut up, mom" kind of kids.
The disrespect today is
Yeah.
crazy. We got to get that under control in America. Especially dads need to like be a dad. Don't let them talk to their mom disrespectfully, and teach them how to treat people, because how they treat people at home, that's going to be a reflection of how they treat people on the outside. And you don't need to be this brutal dictator of a parent to instill respect. Lead by example, and the first time they step out of line, take away everything that they like playing with and doing, and that'll effectively work most of the time
for me.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.